Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
This is Kathy Tarochione, and this is Ron Surz. Welcome to the launch of the Smart Do-It-Yourself Investing Show. This morning, we're going to be talking about the launch of the show and the 4 pillars of smart investing. And then we're going to introduce you to a product that Ron has developed that's called the Age Sage Robo Investor. But before we begin on anything, why don't we find out who is Ron Surz and why is he doing this show? Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Kathy. So we're doing this largely because I've known Kathy for a long time, like all her life.
He's my brother.
And she has a very successful show for people who like pets, and it's called The Dog Connection. I highly recommend that you tune in. It's every Thursday at 10 o'clock Pacific time, right, Kath?
Yeah, well, Mountain Stand, 10 o'clock Pacific time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so we're working together to create a show for people who like money. And if you're here, then you probably like money.
Well, count me in.
There you
I'm
go.
here.
Yeah. So I've been a financial consultant for 50 years, actually, and earned 2 master's degrees, one in applied mathematics from the University of Illinois and a master's in finance from the University of Chicago. And I've been advising institutional investors for about 50 years and trillions of dollars. And I originally worked for the largest pension consulting firm in the country. And then in the 1990s, created my own firm. And this show is really about sharing my experience and my education with my fellow baby boomers. So what I'm going to talk to listeners about is I have something for everybody, but my real focus is on people my age. And I think what you'll hear is that there's a strong possibility that you're really not doing yourself a favor the way you're investing right now. And I don't want to scare you, but I do want to say from what I've been observing is the boomers really are taking a little too much risk with their assets. And I'd like to help you. So what I've done in the last 10 years is I moved away from institutional investing and into the 401k market for defined contribution. So that's still institutional, but now I'm easing more towards individual investors. And I've been managing target date funds in a smart target date fund index since 2007. And in the last 3 or 4 years, it sort of occurred to me that as good as target date funds are, they've attracted $2 trillion in just the last decade, which is phenomenal. And they've done so because the design is smart, got a lot of good things going for it. And individual investors could buy a mutual fund target date fund index. But what I'm going to recommend to you is that you can do your own target date and have it customized to you. If you do a mutual fund, you're in a one-size-fits-all vehicle that's going to do certain things, but it may not be what you need to do. So a target date fund basically is fairly aggressive early on when you're young. And then as you get closer to your retirement date, it gets more and more conservative, largely because as you get closer to your target date, your assets should be growing. And as you enter retirement, they should be near their peak. So the idea in a target date fund is to protect those assets as you make that transition from working life to retirement. So what I've done actually in the last week, I just launched an article. It was published yesterday, and just out of the box, I got 3,000 readers. So I think it's a good article, and I really can talk about it here. But I'd love to have you read it. And it's called "The 4 Pillars of Smart Investing." Before I go too much further, everything that I'm going to be talking about today, you may want to write this down, but it's fairly easy to remember. If you Google Age Sage Robo, just those 3 words, trying to see if I can see them, you will find everything I'm talking about, but most importantly, this article, and you'll find some of the tools that I'm going to be talking about to help you. So let me tell you about what the 4 pillars are. And again, this is our first broadcast, and I think what we might do in future broadcasts is maybe focus on one of the pillars and then move on. But the first pillar of investing is to establish your goals. So if you don't know where you're going, you'll never know if you got there. And I think that's a Yogi Berra quote. And establishing goals basically is just there are a couple of ways you can do it. And one is without an advisor. So there are any number of calculators that you can find on the internet. Many investment firms offer a calculator. And what you would do there is to tell a computer program basically what you plan to save, how much you're earning, how much of that you're going to put aside each year, and so on. And you also tell it what you plan to spend. And the calculator will estimate what you will need to earn in your investments in order for the savings to match up with what you plan to spend. You can also use an investment advisor. And I would suggest baby boomers seriously consider that because it's a very critical time in your life. But if you want to do it yourself, we're calling this the do-it-yourself show. So we're gonna give you some tools. But what will happen then is the calculator or the investment advisor will estimate a rate of return that you'll need to earn. And then they will find a model, and the word model is used throughout investment consulting. Every consulting firm has a collection of models. Most of the firms who provide calculators have a collection of models, and they go from low risk to high risk. Generally, there's 5 of them, and the one in the middle is very popular and gets overused and is not right for boomers. And it's frequently called the 60-40 solution. So that's the one where if you're not sure if you want to be aggressive, you're not sure if you want to be defensive, you go to the middle and you got 60-40. But what will happen for many people, especially those who have not saved enough, is the calculator or the advisor will tell you that you need a fairly high rate of return, maybe 15, 20%, maybe even more. And they will put you in a model that will try to achieve that return. But first of all, be aware that it's a fairly aggressive rate of return. And it may be okay if you're young. So if you strive for a high rate of return, you need to take risk. That's just the nature. You take risk in order to earn a higher rate of return. You wouldn't take the risk otherwise. For those who are in the risk zone, which is defined as the 5 to 10 years before and after retirement, and there are 78 million baby boomers in that risk zone, they do not have the risk capacity to go for the 15 or 20% rate of return. They cannot afford to take that risk. And the whole notion of the risk zone is, and this is very well documented. If you Google it, you'll see. So the second pillar, by the way, is risk capacity. So the first pillar is design your investments to achieve what you need to achieve. But the second pillar is recognize that at certain points in your life, you can't afford to take that risk, and you would be stupid to do so. So in the article, I used the word stupid. I got a little kickback about how insulting that was. But the quote that I really like is Will Rogers once said, and I think this is true. He said, "Everyone is stupid,
Yeah,
but about different things." So
I agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So most of us don't spend our time thinking about this.
No.
You know, we're running a firm or doing whatever we do, investing, as important as it is, and certainly as you're nearing retirement, it becomes extremely important. It's not your focus, and you didn't earn 2 master's degrees, and you haven't spent the last 50 years consulting. So why we're doing the show is I'd like to share with you my experience and my best thinking about how you should be investing. So the risk capacity issue is one that is very important, especially for boomers. And the data for boomers is basically saying that you are on average about 60% in equities. If you're in an individual retirement account, an IRA, you're about 60% in equities. If you're in a target date fund in your 401k, and you're nearing retirement. You're about 60% in equities.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a mix that lost 30% in 2008.
Oh.
Yeah, and there's every reason to think that there's a correction. It's just like the shifting the tectonic plates. Nobody knows when it's going to happen, but if you're not prepared, it's just going to be even worse. So try to protect yourself. So those are the first two pillars, and those are really the most important. The third pillar is diversification, and that, if I want to translate that, is when you're going to take risk, take it in the smartest way you can. So you can just hold stocks or just hold bonds or one asset class, but diversification is the free lunch in investing. And what it will do for you is, for the risk you take, give you the highest possible return. And that sounds like it's too much of a good thing, but it's very well documented that what diversification will do is smooth out the ride. And then the sort of related fact to that is, as you get close to retirement, the best way to control risk, and this is a Nobel Prize winning idea that very few people actually use, and it's a shame because they really should. Dr. William F. Sharp won the Nobel Prize I think in the early 80s for what's called the capital market line. And what he showed is that when you want to control risk, rather than move to safer assets, like more and more to bonds or even safer risky assets, to take a well-diversified portfolio, a global portfolio of stocks and bonds and everything else, and mix that with treasury bills. And that mix will give you a higher expected return for the risk you're taking. So what I'm saying here is a corollary to the diversification is when you move to defend, and certainly as you reach retirement, the best way to manage your risk is not to move to bonds, especially today where interest rates are almost zero. It's crazy. Is to move to treasury bills, which also don't yield much, but they're safe. And the other thing that you move to that's safe is treasury inflation protected securities, TIPS. So that's the third pillar is again, when you take risk, take it as smart as you can, and that's to diversify. Then the fourth pillar is don't spend more than you need to.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to show you is, in today's world, there are low-cost index funds, mutual funds, and also exchange-traded funds called ETFs. And I can build a portfolio for you that, regardless of how you allocate it and how we recommend you allocate it to diversify and be safe, you will spend no more than what's called 3 basis points. And 3 basis points is 0.03%. So if you have a $100,000 account, you can invest that account very wisely, very well diversified, for $30. It's $30 per year.
Wow.
It's free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what I'm going to show you is my advice is almost free. So what we're really saying is, if you use the 4 pillars, you may want to use an advisor. That's fine. I think a lot of people really need the hand-holding. But if you're going to do it yourself, the pillars are there. I think they're fairly straightforward. And I'm going to give you some tools where, if you want to do it yourself, these tools are I think you'll really appreciate them. And I even say this: if you're going to use an advisor, not all advisors are really good. And the problem,
and a lot of people lose their money because they thought they trusted in the
well,
advisor.
the trust is the key thing in using an
That's
advisor.
it. Yeah.
And it's not too unlike your car. I know nothing about a car, so when I bring my car in, and the mechanic says $5,000 to do this, I go, I guess that must be
right. Yeah. Or you don't know that they're really drumming things up that aren't really.
Yeah, and the other thing, once they say they fixed it, the only way you know is that the car runs.
Right. Yeah.
Now, in this case, I think the only way you're going to know that you don't have a good advisor is when things break, and especially for the boomers, something's going to break in the next 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the tectonic plates. It's not everybody, a lot of thoughtful people are seeing a lot of fragility in the markets. You all are observing volatility in the markets because it is very fragile. And one thing that's going on right now that's frightening is this thing called FOMO, and it's fear of missing out.
Oh,
And people, it's true,
yeah,
and it's really happening. And people are looking at the market's up 500% today, and you go, "Oh shit, I want some of that."
yeah, right. Yeah.
It's fear of missing out. Well, someday that's going to turn out to be FOBO, fear of bad outcomes. And how fast and how deep that goes, nobody knows. It's like nobody knows how bad the next earthquake's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
but it will happen. So there's no reason, especially for the boomers, to take on a 60-40 level of risk. So I guess that's what I'm here to share with you. So
I want to say good morning to some of the people that are watching now. I know
yeah,
Barbara's
thank you. Hi.
watching, Joanna's watching, uh, Dale. Good morning, Dale,
Hi.
and good morning,
Hey, everybody.
Gaytan. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so then how about we go into Ren? What is smart investing?
Yeah. Smart investing is following the four pillars. And again, it's just, and the key thing, again, is we all go through life saving and hopefully saving enough for retirement. And as we transition from our working life to retirement, the risk of loss translates into what we call the risk of ruin. So it's a very critical time because our savings are as high as they're ever going to be, unless we're in a defined contribution, a defined benefit plan. And defined benefit plans were so good, and it's a shame that they've sort of they're almost gone. So if you're fortunate enough to be in a defined benefit plan, much of what I'm saying really doesn't apply to you. And I wish I could help, but there's not much I can do. But if you're in a defined contribution plan, the risk is entirely on you. And as you go into that transition, there's this concept called enough. And if you have enough, then you probably don't want to risk it. You want to keep it. And the word enough, I think, takes on a really interesting meaning as you leave the workforce, because now you're giving up a check and you don't have that to rely on. Enough for you is whatever you've got, because that's all there is.
Yeah.
So you will make plans to make enough last as long as it can.
Mm-hmm.
And if you lose a reasonable proportion of that enough, those plans are out the window. That's toast. And I have a colleague of mine who is a very successful financial consultant who used to say, "You're going to find yourself living under the bridge eating cat food." Nobody
Yeah.
would wish that on anybody.
Yeah. Right.
But I can't emphasize this enough. The boomers are risking enough.
Yeah.
And even the rich guys. So some people say, if you got millions and millions of dollars, it's enough. You can. The flip side of protecting enough is, hey, you can risk it because even if you lose a lot, you still got enough left. If you're rich and you're listening to this, I'm not sure why you would be, but thanks for listening. You've got more to lose,
Right.
and so why would you put it at risk if you got as much as you're ever going to need in your life, and enough for the heirs and everything else? Keep it safe.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's sort of the underpinnings of a target date fund. But I will say that, and I've written a lot about this, target date funds are generally taking too much risk for people who are near retirement. And I've got a lot of proof statements about this, but they are roughly about 60% in equities at the target date. The right allocation, I really believe this, is no more than 20% in equities.
Hmm.
And what that sets up actually is a revolution in investing while you're in retirement. And there's been a lot of research done, but two researchers, Dr. Wade Pfau and Michael Kitces, have written a very thoughtful and groundbreaking article about what the right approach is in retirement. And bottom line, if you stayed very conservative throughout retirement, you probably won't be, you're going to need more from the capital markets than you're going to get from that. So the idea is to be very safe while you're making the transition. And then what they find is a gradual re-risking, getting back into the capital markets while you're in retirement is the optimal thing to do. It's the smartest thing to do. No target date fund does that except mine. And if you use my tools, I will give you some guidance on how to do that. Now, you wouldn't want to find yourself at 80 years old as aggressive as you were at 20. So the rough numbers at 20 years old, you might be 80, 90% in equities, fairly aggressive. You can make that money back. You're getting a check. Capital markets normally do bounce back. So you've got time to get to recover from that. When you're 80 years old, none of that's true. So the level of risk there is roughly about 45 to 50% in equities. And again, the research says that's a good thing to do. Some people come to the same conclusion, but through a different approach that uses what's called buckets. And the idea of buckets is to start your retirement with a lot in your bond bucket to give your equities enough time to run and to if they do have trouble to recover from that. And then you spend the bond bucket first. Well, if you do that, what you're really doing is increasing your equity allocation. And so these two things dovetail one to the other.
Wow.
So the bucket approach dovetails with this very rigorous research so in a nutshell, smart investors will take the risk that they can afford. I mean, if their objectives are not very aggressive, when you're young, you don't need to take the risk. But if you have fairly aggressive objectives, then you can take it. But then as the time nears where you're going to rely more and more on your savings, putting those at risk is a big mistake. So you want to be very, very safe during this transition called the risk zone. And then once you're in retirement, about 5 to 10 years, you really should start to get back into the capital markets and re-risk again, just to extend the life of your savings. So that's what's smart.
Okay, Ron. Now, I was thinking to myself, I think most people don't even think that they have enough ever.
Yeah.
Isn't that the case?
Well, yeah, I shared this with some people, but I have a professor friend here in San Clemente who knows some wealthy people, and he goes, so these friends, they got $100 million.
Yeah.
And they want more.
Well, look at all the celebrities that currently you see that they're going bankrupt after they've made 50, 60, 70 million dollars, and now it's bankruptcy because they didn't know how to manage it and they never thought they had enough. So I think that's one of the very key points right here. But hey, let's give a drum roll, because let's talk about your patented technology, the Age Sage robo advisor. Okay, I'm
Sure.
going to put up a picture about that so that we see that Invest for Success with Age Sage, and Ron's going to go through what exactly this is. And I'm going to share our screen here. Wait a second here. First off, though, Ron, what are the problems that Age Sage solves for the baby boomers?
Yeah, the boomers, as a group, they're not thinking.
Because they're old.
and the data is scary. 60-40 is where the average boomer is invested right now. And I'm going to use the word stupid. It's stupid. And it's stupid and scary. And I'm really screaming.
I'm saying that. The hashtag stupid is scary.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm so afraid that this correction will happen. They'll learn a lesson that it's going to be terrible. It could be terrible, and it'd be too late. So it makes no sense to wait for the earthquake to happen,
right?
And then decide you're going to earthquake-proof your building. It's too late. It's over. So that's how I'm trying to help the boomers, is say, please look at the risk you're taking.
Right.
And I need to say this: if your advisor is telling you 60-40, I think he's wrong.
Uh,
And maybe you should get another advisor. And that I'm really going on the limb there. And the advisors who listen to this, they're going to go, "What an asshole!"
yeah, right.
But
They are probably, yeah.
yeah,
Hey, folks, it's a good thing that you can swear on these shows. You know,
does that does that count?
it does count. Yeah,
All
that's okay.
right,
All
I'll
right,
take.
Ron. Now we're going to go into how do people use the advisor, and then also what are the steps needed to start using it. Okay, and but first off, let's look at. Let me go over here. Let me look at one of these here. Now you kind of went over this that winning the end game, and we're going to go into let's see
That's
actual. Oops, wait, didn't mean to
yeah,
do
that's too soon. Yeah,
yeah, didn't mean to do that.
yeah,
Sorry. Okay, what we're going to do now is look at Ron's website. It's called, this is for the Age Sage area. Now, explain what we're doing here, Ron.
yeah. Well, first of all, again, if you Google Age Sage Robo, those three words, you'll come to this website. And the first thing you're well, first of all, there's a lot of stuff to read, and I really encourage you to do that. But in the upper right corner of that page is the article, "The Four Pillars of Smart Investing." And if the only thing you do is come to the website and read that, um, I think you do yourself a big favor. It's only 10 pages. I think it could be a book. It's important enough to be a book. But in 10 minutes you'll learn, I think, a lot. And then just to the left of that is a login page. And if you want to use my tools, and it's well, it's totally up to you. But the first thing you're going to need to do before anything else is set up an account, and it will ask you to enter your username, your password. If you're going to use the system, you'll have to tell it a credit card number.
Well, why don't we do that, Ron?
And
Why don't we
the
do it? Let's show the folks. Okay, the
Yeah,
first
sure.
thing they're going to
Okay.
come to is the pricing here. Maybe we want to talk about that, and then how they go through this.
Right. So once you've established an account, you can say you want to subscribe. So it'll bring you to a place where you can buy the solution. So what I'm really offering here is it's a recommendation, but one that you can certainly make your own. So if you just want to use the system one time for $50, I will give you a look at what I consider to be smart for your situation. So this is not a bunch of models like everybody else is using, 5 or 10 models, and it'll try to match you up with a model. And this is not that. This is very tailored to who you are, what you need to do, whether you're a boomer or not, how much risk you like to take. And if you think you might want to use the system more than once, you can buy what's called a package. And instead of if you think you want to use it 5 times, instead of $250, it'll be 245, I think, something like. So it's less than $50 per usage if you buy a package. So there are five selections for $240. You may want to buy more than one and share,
Or
and even
gift
give
it.
gifts. Yeah, you can gift it.
Yeah.
And you may say, so why would I even want to use it more than once? Well, things will change. For one thing, you'll get older. And as you get older, you probably want to revisit this. But also, your situation will change. You may have a new child. You may be sending people to school. Relatives might move in with you. So this is a very fluid and dynamic situation. We all have very unique needs and wants. And again, the first pillar is goals. You need to do something with your money. But the second pillar is, I think, the key thing, especially for people who have low risk capacity, is to not to totally override whatever someone would tell you need to take to do your goals, with the fact that you may not be able to afford that risk. And that's what this will do for you.
Ron, I think that a lot of people's hair rose on their back when you said relatives may move in.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Okay, let's go through what it looks like if you were going to buy. Now, I'm going to read this to you here because it says in order to purchase a package, you must be logged into the Age Sage first, which Ron was talking about, that you have to set up your own account. So this first screen is for those that already have an account or are logged in. Right next to it is the sign up. This is where you would sign up in order to get it. Then once you have your account, you'll be able to go back to logging in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's
So don't get frustrated. Just be aware that you're going to need to. For number one step, if you want to use my help, is to sign in. Oh, before I forget, I'm not going to tell anybody who you are or what your email address is or anything else. This is
everything is confidential.
my personal guarantee. That's never going to happen.
Right. Right. Okay. And then also, Ren, let's look at a sample report so you can explain to them what they're going to get.
Sure. So this is I intend this to be very simple and be aware that there's some fairly sophisticated mathematics going on behind the scenes, but there's no reason to make you do all the work. So the two key questions are, when do you plan to retire? And I need to know that in order to say, the presumption is going to be that whatever you have right now, again, if you're not in a defined benefit plan, is all you're going to have. So you're going to need to live on that on your retirement date. So whatever date you put in there, that's the date that I view as being the critical date for you to be defensive. And then the risk preference lets you tell me, how defensive you really want to be. So let me put it really bluntly. If you choose the aggressive box and you're not going to retire for another 40 years, I will give you a fairly aggressive solution. If you tell me you want to be aggressive and you retire in 2 years, I'm going to give you a very defensive solution, even though he'll be defensive on the aggressive side. If it's just like I don't know, medium rare. It's not rare. It's not well done. So I'm not going to allow you to take a lot of risk when you're near retirement, even if you tell me you want to be aggressive. If you're far away from retirement, I'm going to let you go for the fences. If you've been in retirement for 10 to 15 years and you say you want to be aggressive, I'll let you be fairly aggressive. So that's the dynamic that's going on here. Then the third choice you have, and then the box that I recommend that you choose, is the lowest cost. And if you choose that box, I'm going to give you very low cost index funds to invest in. But if you're on a brokerage platform, you can tell the system to put you on Schwab funds or Fidelity or Vanguard, and the list goes on. This is the representative list there. I think there's about 15 choices that you could use. And then the solution tells you, in this case, there are 3 equity funds: a U.S. stock fund, a foreign stock fund, a real estate fund. It tells you how to allocate to them. And if you see the blue area there where the ticker symbols are, like it says SPTM and so on, if you click on that, it will open up a detailed report on what that fund is. So if you really want to understand it, it'll open up and tell you. And if you don't like it, you can certainly invest in whatever you like. So again, this is giving you some guidance, but I wouldn't say to you that it'd be a mistake to not use the funds I'm indicating here. They're placeholders, representations of what you should consider. Then in this case, there are 2 bond funds: a U.S. bond fund and a foreign bond fund. And then finally, the safe assets, I call them cash, but they're treasury bills and treasury inflation protected securities, TIPS. Now, the other thing here too is you're probably going to want to save this. You can write it down on a piece of paper. So before you leave the solution, you probably want to write it down. There's also a button there to say export to Excel. So there it would put the results out to an Excel file. Other choices would be to do a screen capture, print the screen, Um, but I'm just saying, what you don't want to leave the screen and they say, "Oh, now, now I'm gonna implement, and I don't remember what it said." Don't
Yeah.
do that. That's not going to be good.
Well, we got another one. Look who's here, Ron. Hi, Lou.
Hi, Lou.
Hi, Lou. What about me? You don't say hello to me? Okay, so now, why is age save so important to the seniors?
Well, it's
Robo
important. I
advisor.
think for two reasons. There way too many are taking way too much risk. I've said that way too many times now on the show, but it's important because it's so easy. I mean, you answer three questions, but two are the critical thing. When are you going to retire, and how much risk do you like to take? Couldn't be easier. And it's important because now is the time to protect your assets, and enough is whatever you saved has got to be enough because it's all there is. Doesn't stop there.
Okay, so for the last part, what is it that you want to say on a personal level? Because I know that you have been given this wonderful gift, Ron, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing it. I'm very proud of you.
Well,
I'm
thanks. I'm
proud
proud of
that
you
you're
too.
doing that. I'm proud that you're doing this show. I'm
Yeah,
proud that you're taking this gift and wanting to give to people because we all can create something, and then there are a lot of people that will create it, but they want to keep it to themselves. You've already done this. You already know this. So you haven't done it for yourself. You've done it for those people, the baby boomers, and what are there, 78 million of them
78 million. Yeah,
that could be in this situation, and you're not putting a band-aid on something. What you're doing is you're providing a solution before it even happens because you're predicting that this will happen sooner or later, and rather than be caught with your pants down, take advantage of it now. Am I right?
yeah. That's absolutely. It's going to sound altruistic, and I'm obviously charging something, but it's so minimal as to be free.
Right, right.
And what I want to do is share my years of experience. And this is, I don't think this is ever going to happen again. There's supposed to be a boomer echo, but right now this phenomenon of this population bulge is probably going to be one time ever. And I don't think the investment community has reacted as it should have, and isn't moving to protect. And I think that the fear, and it's a real fear, if the 78 million boomers all moved out of the capital markets to safety, the capital markets are going to plummet. But I would say let the last guy out the door shut off the lights, because I don't want to be the last guy out the door.
Yeah,
You want to be the first.
right. Yeah,
And if your friends start telling you, they're making a fortune and you're sitting on the sidelines and you're not making any money, that day will come. That
yeah.
day will come.
Well, want to thank you everyone for watching the Smart Do-It-Yourself Investing Show. It's the first show. We'll be having more of them, of course. I'm not sure exactly what when they're going to be, but thank you so much, everyone. And
Thank you.
Ron, you did an excellent job. Thanks, everybody,
Well, you
for
too.
watching. We'll be seeing you real soon, okay?
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.